What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Get Snuffed. It's Drew and Madison right here, and today we are going to be going through our personal favorite characters throughout the history of Survivor. So, similar in vein to the Greatest Moments podcast, we both made our own lists. We're both going to go over our lists. It'll be split up into two parts, and should be a good time. Anything you got to say, Madison?
I think our lists are going to be more similar this time than with the moments. Maybe not in position, but I think we'll have a lot of the same people on the list.
I think so too. Except for maybe some of the people you're less familiar with than I am.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where it might get different.
Yeah.
So, anyway, just wanted to talk to you guys about some stuff before we get into the podcast, before we get into the trivia question for the day. I just wanted to make sure you guys know that we are currently on Apple Podcasts, we are currently on Spotify, and we are currently on YouTube. So subscribe on YouTube. Our YouTube channel name is Get Snuffed. Follow us on Twitter at Get Snuffed. That's where we'll have a lot of our links to everything. Follow us on Spotify. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you follow us everywhere. We'd really appreciate it. And also, make sure you leave reviews on Apple Podcasts. I don't know if Spotify has reviews, honestly. Still getting familiar with some things here. Leave comments on YouTube. Tweet at us. Let us know anything you want to see. Let us know any critique you may have. It would be greatly appreciated. And the other thing is that we have officially installed a schedule. So we will be posting our podcast every day, Tuesday and Thursday. It should be around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. I'm the one behind that. But if you don't see it then, and it's going to show up later, there's a reason for that, and that's why you should follow us on Twitter, because that's where I will be giving updates saying, here's why this is happening, here's when it's going up, just in case it doesn't go up at 5 Eastern. Anyway, let's get back into the regular program. Trivia for today. I'm asking the question for Madison, and the question I've got for you today is, there are 4 Survivor players who have played multiple times and never been voted out. Can you name the 4?
Oh, the 4. Well, I know one's Colton.
Yes, that's one.
Okay, 4. Wow. Oh, Scoopin.
Scoopin's 2.
I'm trying to think. Michelle would be a 3rd.
Michelle is 3. Do you know the last one?
That's gonna be difficult. Because it would either have to be people who have made Final Tribal Council, have quit, or been medevaced multiple times. Oh, God. I can't think of the 4th person.
You can't think of it? Do you have any guesses?
No.
All right. Well, yeah, you got the 3 in Scoopin, Colton, and Michelle. And the last one that you missed is Jenna Maraska.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
She won Amazon and ended up sadly quitting from All Stars in a very awful fashion. Didn't
But
like to see her. Very understandable. I'm saying it's very understandable. It's just, you don't like to see people quit because they know they have someone dying at home. It's just, you want to see them out there, but you don't want to see them sad, and you don't want to see them rushing to people in need. It's like how we were sad when Terry Dietz left the game. That's just kind of how it goes. We understand. We're fully in support of them, but it's just unfortunate for the viewers because we want to see them.
But Terry Dietz for another season. If Terry Dietz isn't back on our TV screens, Survivor's doing us wrong.
Yes, I totally agree. All right, well, I'm ready to get into this character list. Let's kick it off with you, Madison. Who do you got at number 20?
Sounds good. At number 20, I have Spencer Bledsoe from Survivor Cagayan and Survivor Second Chances. Cagayan's one of my favorite seasons. I love Cagayan, and Second Chance was when I really got back into the franchise. So that might have to do with a lot of it. And I haven't seen a lot of the seasons in a long time, so I don't really remember the characters. So I did have to double dip a little bit. I really enjoy Spencer. I think he brings a very interesting perspective, and he's also grown a lot on the TV show. Like, his arcs have always been very interesting. In each of his seasons alone and between the seasons, and he's funny, he's witty, he's a good strategist, he makes big moves, he's very entertaining to watch, and I just enjoy him a lot.
Mm-hmm. I don't have Spencer on my list. I have him on my short list.
I didn't think you would.
For a while, he was actually one of my all-time favorite Survivor characters, funnily enough. I was really hot on him after Cagayan. I think a lot of that had to do with recency bias, but I still really like Spencer. I think that I completely agree with you that his arcs and his development and his seasons are very fun, because he kind of comes in, especially with the 2-season arc, he comes into Cagayan as a total hothead, really. And he's so emotional, so into the game, and I think it was made even better that he started out on that awful brain tribe, and then when he's playing from the bottom and having to scrape by, winning immunities, just being Tony's buddy, kind of saying, hey, I'm here if you ever want to blindside anyone. And then you see him in Second Chance, and you see how he's matured, and he starts to really realize who he's becoming as a person. He opens up to people, and another thing that's great about Spencer is how good of a narrator he is. He's so good as a super fan of the game that he knows everything about the game, and he knows how to articulate it. It is his wit, and everything he says is very spot on. You really are able to keep track of what's going on with Spencer's confessionals, which is something I like. I like the characteristic of being a narrator. I think it helps you a lot as a character.
Oh, 100%. If you're not good at narrating, if you can't give good confessionals, you're not going to be a good Survivor character, because Survivor is not going to be able to show us who you are. That's probably the one single skill that you should get good at if you want to go on Survivor. At least if you want to get shown on TV. If you don't really care if you're on TV or not, if you get a purple edit, that's fine with you. Do whatever you need to do. Like, then you can focus a little bit more on the strategy. But if you really want to be on TV, learn how to narrate, tell your story, talk your decisions out loud. Get good at that. Practice.
Well, to be fair, they're not usually going to cast people unless they are good at that already. They're going to be able to tell through the casting process.
They don't always, because a lot of time people's ability to do it falls when they don't eat. The brain fog just gets too much of them, and they can't talk anymore. So don't be so sure about that.
That's true. All right, well, we're going to move on to my number 20, and just to make sure I knew more talking points for this person, I actually watched quite a bit of YouTube videos on this guy recently. He almost didn't make the list. He was very close. I actually had someone in originally, but then I swapped them out. And at number 20, I've got from Survivor Gabon and Survivor Heroes vs. Villains, I've got Randy Bailey. I love Randy as the wedding videographer who is certain that he will never get married, and he's not very into the idea of marriage. And I think it's made better also when he starts off on that awful Fong tribe, and he is just so pissed off at everyone. He is talking so much shit in his confessionals, whether it's to Jillian, to GC, or most notably to Crystal. He just badmouths everyone in his confessionals. And there's things that I love more about Randy when I see him. Like, there's there's a couple of moments of him in challenges that I absolutely love. Like one where they're blindfolded and they have to block a ball on a hill, and then he starts calling out to the other tribe commands, and they start listening to Randy, and then it fools them. And there's also a challenge where he has to get people off the pole, like the one where they're hanging onto the pole and they have to get dragged back. And he's like, you ain't getting out of this. And he's just like talking to these people during the challenges. And you don't see that much where these people are trying to use intimidation within challenges. And it goes to show how good of a villain Randy really was. And then you got his whole dumb moment with the fake idol play, where Bob gives him the fake idol, and everyone makes him look stupid. But throughout that tribal council, he's still just getting in arguments with Crystal, being that old grumpy man we love. And then Heroes vs. Villains, he wasn't on the screen long because he was very clearly on the outs. But he still had a great moment when he gets voted out. And he knew he was getting voted out, but he throws his buff in the fire anyway. At least sell it. I mean, make a profit off
it. 100%. Randy's a great pick. The main reason he's not on my list is I don't remember Gabon at all. I know I watched it, but I don't remember it. And obviously he was barely on Heroes vs. Villains for obvious reasons. So I'm not very familiar with him from actually watching him, but everything I've heard about Randy is fantastic. I'm sure I'll love him by the time I get to Gabon, and it's going to be great. 10 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Great choice.
You got to get on these seasons, girl.
I know. I'm almost done with Australia right now.
Okay.
So that's where we're at.
All right. Who do you got at number 19?
So, in all of your Randy talk, it actually reminded me of a character, and I made a last-minute change to the list. I will say, I'll say my pick first for 19, and then after I explain it, I will share who I took off the list for that. Just right now, number 19, I have Jonathan Penner from Cook Islands, Fans vs. Favorites, and Philippines. Once again, I love Philippines. It's like, of the seasons I've watched, which is not as many as you have, is probably, actually definitely in my top 5 and might be in my top 3. I love that season so much. I love that he shit talks Jeff all the time. He's just constantly ragging Jeff. And let's be frank, he's not a very good Survivor player. I think he has ideas, but he's not very good at working with people. And isn't very good at controlling his feelings. And that doesn't bode well for a very good Survivor player, but he's hilarious. He makes his opinions very well known, and isn't afraid to say it how it is. And that's one of my favorite qualities just in people I watch on TV. Even politicians I watch on TV. Love people who just say it as it is. I'm drawn immediately to them. And Penner is that guy. And I love him. I still love all the stuff he's doing, especially when it comes to his activism, but also when it just comes to him just talking about Survivor. He's still hilarious. Love Jonathan Penner so much.
I like that you brought up the activism because I definitely want to mention that our thoughts and prayers always go out to Jonathan and Stacy. If you have any way to donate to the ALS Foundation or any way to really support the disease, I'm sure many people in the Survivor community would appreciate it, but especially Jonathan and Stacy. But getting back to Jonathan within the TV screen, I think that Jonathan actually, he's a good player in the sense that he knows his move that will get him further in the game. What he's not good at doing is establishing his route to the end from the beginning. You see this in Cook Islands where he flips numerous amounts of times and pisses everyone off, which is why he couldn't get to the end. But his flips allowed him to get further in the game because he could have easily been the merge boot, but he makes sure he's not the merge boot by flipping. He's smart about that. And just in terms of Penner as a character, I completely agree. Getting back to really good narrators, too, Penner is one of the best we've ever had. I mean, he's leading in confessional counts in Cook Islands, and he was 7th place. That shows how much screen time he got because he was such a good narrator, and he's so good about talking what was going on. And Philippines, I'm pretty sure he was up there on the confessional count as well, but that was kind of more expected as the returnee. However, he does have those great moments where he is very funny. He's kind of like Spencer in a way where he's got the wit and he's just an older version of Spencer. He's definitely got that dad bod going. He's got the iconic look with that hat too, that fedora.
He's like Spencer if Spencer never grew. He's just maintained that same attitude all 3 of his seasons, and yes. I'm here for it.
I agree. Great. And I think his best outing was still in Cook Islands, but I really enjoyed him in Micronesia until he sadly got medevaced, and I really enjoyed him in Philippines as well. And it just it goes to show if you can come back 3 times and people are still going to love you every single time, even though they're going to see you as a threat, then you're a good character. You're good for the TV screen.
100%. Totally agree with everything you said. It sounds like you don't have him on your list.
I do not. He's on my short list.
Yeah, I figured that as much too. I will say who I originally had in this spot, in that last minute change. I originally had Sarah Lucina in spot 19. I do enjoy Penner as a character a lot more than Sarah, but I think that especially after 3 seasons, we've gotten something new from Sarah in every season. And I think that all of the versions of Sarah that we've seen have been compelling TV. And she showed a lot of her personality in season 40, and I very much enjoyed that. But Penner is better than Sarah Lucina, so he got the spot over her.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to talk about people that weren't on my short list, Sarah Lucina was not on my short list for characters.
That's fair.
But she is a queen. I love Sarah. Really have nothing bad to say about Sarah. It's just she doesn't stick out to me as someone I always enjoy watching on TV, in the sense that a lot of these other people make me excited to tune in. Sarah, she doesn't make me excited to tune in. She makes me feel good about tuning in. It's just, I feel like other people bring out the excitement of the show better.
Oh, totally. 100% agree. Let's not spend any more time here since she's not actually on either of our lists, and go on to your number 19.
All right, well, my number 19, everyone knows her. We're going to another queen right here, and it's Cirie Fields. Cirie, I just have always enjoyed watching Cirie because, I mean, she has that classic story of the person that got off the couch to come play Survivor, and that kind of gets overplayed by Jeff. However, Cirie, she has so many funny moments. Her laugh is so contagious. You can tell she's having a good time whenever she's out there. And she's one of those people that you really see out of her element, but still finding a way to thrive. And a lot of people like Cirie that have been cast on the show have not been able to make it far. And it shows that Cirie's highly intelligent. And that's just what I like about Cirie. And you also see that Cirie's this very kind person with her time as a nurse. And you even see her nursing on the island in Panama a couple times. And then you also see her family, and you see how attached she is to her family, whether it's HB or her son. She very much is a heartwarming person. You see her with relationships with people like Michaela and Aris, where she's like the mother to them. She's a perfect mother for the show of Survivor. I think she's the best in terms of that archetype that we've ever seen, and that's why I have to put Cirie on my list.
I agree with you 100%. Obviously, I really like that you say that she's the mother of Survivor, and I think that more people need to say that. She really is. She feels like all of our mothers. Yes. And she feels like the mother of the game, too. She's made a lot of, dare I say, game-changing moves.
Oh, and the puns!
And has really pushed forward all aspects of the Survivor game, whether that be the strategic aspect with the 3-2-1, the social aspect with convincing Eric or planting the idea in Eric's head to give up his immunity. Like, these things that are all Cirie, that she is constantly just moving with the flow of the game and pushing things forward. She is on my list, so that's all I'll say about her now. But I do think that 19 might be a little low for Cirie.
There's a lot of great characters in Survivor.
That's fair.
I think people forget that Suri had to deal with that crazy-ass Kasaya tribe for so long. And she was able to do it, probably very difficult for her, taking care of all of those people, but she did it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If that doesn't speak character. Mama Survivor, I don't know what does.
She literally was the mom of that tribe.
She was. All right, well, I guess we're moving on now. Who do you got at 18?
So my number 18 is a more recent character on our TV screens. I think that this character will always be entertaining every time that we see them on our TV screens. We may not have seen a ton, but if we do see more, it's gonna be great. And that is Nora from season 39, Island of the Idols. Where did they find her? She's hilarious. Anything that comes out of her mouth is just crazy. She's a crazy lady, but in like a nice way. Like, I think she's the better iteration of Debbie. She gives off very Debbie vibes, but she's nicer, she's more palatable, and she had some great moments on 39. I have her on here purely for an entertainment value. Nora is not a game player, once again. She really lives her life and will make small moves to make sure that she has a better position, but she's really not making waves. She's really not pushing hard. She's just there and hoping for the best, and that's okay because she gives us great TV. And Island of the Idols would have been such a boring season, and one that I would absolutely never talk about if it were not for Nora. And some other people, of course, but I think Nora was one of the biggest parts, and we needed that lightness on that season. She was perfectly cast for that, even though they obviously didn't know what was going to happen, and we needed it, and I'm so here for it.
Yeah, Island of the Idols is, well, I'm not going to get into it. I don't like to talk about that season. However, Nora is on my list. I do think she is a great character. I don't want to talk about her too much because I will be talking about her later. However, I do agree that she was just a bright spot there, and she was always going to be enjoyable. And she is someone that I do want to see on my TV again, because she's just someone that makes you happy to tune in. That's kind of what it comes down to. I like those kinds of people. And she's definitely one of the better characters in recent seasons of Survivor, which is a good thing because we need some better modern characters. I feel like some of them are getting a bit too deep into gameplay sometimes. I want to see a few more character moments on Survivor. That's what I liked about Winners at War. There were a few more character moments. But Nora's strategic moments end up being character moments because Nora's just that kind of player where she doesn't really get what's going on, as you had to say, and then it ends up being her character moments where she just looks like a fool, but it's in a fun way. It's not exactly, wow, you fucking idiot. It's like, how can you do that? Like, where do you get that idea to think that's gonna work? It's that sort of stuff. It's good comedic relief, and you don't see a lot of women that are the comedic relief for a season. So I definitely have to give points there where credit is due.
I agree with you 100%. I think that every all-star season of Survivor needs some sort of non-strategic factor. And Nora is one of the best non-strategic factors that you can add into any season of Survivor. Because she's going to, just by essence of who she is, cause chaos. But everyone's going to love her, so they're going to kind of want to keep her around. So you get the high entertainment values, the high chaos, and the low strategy, and it's beautiful. And if I would be very happy, and I would not be surprised to see Nora on our TV screens again. But let's move on to your number 18 now.
Okay. So my number 18, and I want to preface this, I know that his original season and a lot of his comments have not aged well. However, there are still plenty of diamonds in the rough with this character. At number 18, I've got Rob Cesternino. I think Rob Cesternino, especially considering the time period of Survivor, really stands out in terms of his character in Survivor because, sure, we may have seen nerds before this, but we hadn't seen a nerd who was able to give these good confessionals, that knew so much about the game, that knew how to manipulate these people, and that's just what made Rob great. He was like a kid in a candy store to me at the same time, too, where, of course, he's placed on the men's tribe, because that was the theme of Amazon. It was men versus women. And the way he brings his magic 8-ball, I've never seen such a great luxury item in terms of usage on Survivor, where he's using the magic 8-ball to say, like, will I sleep with Heidi tonight, and stuff like that. And it's just like, you can tell he's never really met women like the people that were cast on Survivor, and he's just starstruck by them immediately, which I find absolutely hilarious. But then there's more elements to Rob, where you realize that he is just a nice guy. He kind of gets caught up in everything that's going on, but he's also a great game player. He knows exactly what he's doing out there. He's very knowledgeable about the game. He's playing like a ping pong ball. That's what a lot of people say, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's just flipping back and forth, and you haven't really seen that before, and he really developed what it meant to be a Survivor player, and he was very funny in the process, and he was great at narrating. He dominated confessional time that season, and all around, he's just that kid in the candy store. That's how I see him, and he's awesome.
I think all of your points are great. The only reason he's not on my list is I haven't seen Amazon since I was literally 5 years old. I don't remember it at all. I couldn't put him on my list from just knowing him from All Stars and his podcast. But I think that what you say about the Magic 8-ball is you're right. It was such a smart luxury item. And I think part of that was because Rob was more of a Big Brother guy. He applied for Big Brother. He went through the Big Brother casting process, and that's the show he wanted to do, not Survivor. And that's a very Big Brother player move. That is very, like, obviously it's not like something that would happen in Big Brother. There aren't like luxury items. I'm sure someone could bring in a Magic 8-ball. I don't feel like that would be against the rules. It might be a Big Brother. We're getting into the semantics. It doesn't matter.
If Kel can bring in beef jerky to Survivor, I'm pretty sure that someone could bring an 8-ball into Big Brother.
I'm like, I don't know the rules. We don't need to get into the semantics of the rules of Big Brother, but I think that is very much the type of social move and social manipulation almost that Big Brother, like, especially in the early days of Big Brother, was happening and was being seen on TV. And because of his knowledge of Big Brother, that's why he played the game he did. And that was kind of the first time someone played more of a Big Brother game in Survivor. And it really did push the strategy in a different direction. And
he did base his game off of Will Kirby.
Exactly.
So that's kind of a big reason for that. But even with the Magic 8-ball, it's not just a smart luxury item, it's just a funny luxury item. It's just like, will I sleep with Heidi? Yes.
But that's why it is smart. That's why it is smart, is because it's building those social connections based off this thing that everyone knows how it works, and everyone can just ask stupid questions to it. But you're the guy who allowed all that to happen, and that's what's smart about it, is you are controlling the social interactions that are happening, and you're controlling who's kind of interacting and in what way, and that's what's so smart about it.
Yes.
Not necessarily that it allowed for better strategy, the Magic 8-ball itself, but it's the control of the socialization of the group that almost was more the Magic 8-ball.
All right, so what I just got an idea for what I want to see on Survivor at some point. I want someone to play a game entirely based off a Magic 8-ball where they have to make every decision based off a Magic 8-ball. Can that be a twist in the game?
I was about to say, that sounds like very much a opening Big Brother game. Like, twist, like one person is going to get a punishment where the Magic 8 Ball decides everything they do for the rest of the week or whatever. That's very Big Brother.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also kind of like Two-Face from Batman, where he flips a coin. It's just like, do I kill them or do I not kill them? I just think it'd be funny. It'd be really stupid, but it'd be really funny.
Oh, yeah. 100% agree.
All right, so who do you got at 17, Madison?
So my number 17 is from the season Millennials versus Generation X, and it is Jay. I don't know his last name, otherwise I'd say it.
Star it.
I was like, I kind of can see it, but I don't know how to pronounce it. But Jay, I think Jay is a very fun Survivor character. I think, once again, he fills that kind of like surfer dude archetype, which was interesting that there were kind of two of those people on that season, because Taylor is definitely more of the surfer bro, but Jay also filled that archetype, but he was pretty strategic. He was very fun. He was very likable, but he was also kind of the villain of that season. Like, he fills such an interesting spot because no one disliked him. No one was necessarily rooting against him. If anything, people were probably rooting for him, but he was still the villain of that season. And it just was so, you can't help but be drawn to everything he says. He's super charismatic. Honestly, I think most of the people we saw a decent amount of on MVGX were really good narrators. Obviously, David took up a lot of the screen time because David, like, literally his job is related to, like, storytelling and stuff like that. He's going to be good at it. But everyone on that season were really good storytellers, but his story was so interesting, and I'd love to see him again and see kind of what they continue to do with his character, since they aren't going to be able to replicate anything near his story again. It's going to have to be a completely new arc for him, which I'm very excited for.
Mm-hmm. I do have Jay on my list, so I'm not going to say too much more. However, I do like your point of how Millennials versus Gen X had a lot of good narrators, actually. Come to think about it, David, Adam, Zeke, and Jay all could be very good narrators for a season. But what I do want to say about Jay really quick is that Jay, I felt, is really unique as, really, I think, the best anti-hero the series has ever seen. I think a lot of people would argue that Lex is an anti-hero. I think Lex is more of a villain, personally. However, Jay is that anti-hero where he is mischievous. He's doing awful stuff a lot. But you can't help but not love him. You're loving Jay the whole time. You're rooting for him to get to the end. And you see all the flaws in him, but even at the same time, while he may be Adam's enemy, he's also Adam's best friend. It's a perfect anti-hero right there. And I think that's what makes Jay so unique, on top of everything you had already mentioned.
Yeah, he's so interesting to watch. I love him so much. And I think if there's ever a second chance season again, which I think would be a really smart thing for Survivor to do, because that fan vote, well, it probably led to more pre-gaming and maybe a more boring season. Like, it could have been different if there wasn't so much pre-gaming. I still think that the fan vote is really fun. I think we get really interesting people out of it. And I think he's a shoo-in for a second chance too. There's no chance he's not on that ballot unless he plays again before the second chance too. He's a shoo-in.
I'd like to see Jay again, that's for sure.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
But let's hear your number 17 now.
All right, at number 17 for me, I feel like this one might surprise you a little bit, but we're going back to the original Black Widow. We are going with Jerry Manthe at number 17. Australia, All-Stars, Heroes vs. Villains, an awesome 3-time player. And Jerry definitely is well known for being the adversary to Colby, and also kind of the love interest of Colby, or more like Jerry was kind of head over heels for Colby. However, that's what makes Jerry great to me. I feel like Jerry, she doesn't really understand the game too well, And she is just a fun character in the way that she's in her own world. She's doing what she wants to do. She has a lot of similarities to Nora now that I think about it. But at the same time, she's also perceived as this villain, which is really interesting at the same time. It's not as lighthearted with Jerry. I feel like there's a lot more depth to her. And you see her try and build these relationships with people. And it usually ends up being relationships with men, as I've seen that have been portrayed on the show. Because her most noteworthy ones in every season was actually a man, now that I think about it. Because Heroes vs. Villains, it was... I'd say it was Coach at first, then it turned into Colby just because of the history. All-Stars, it was probably Lex that she was talking to the most. And in... what's the other season? Australia, it's definitely Colby.
Yeah.
And I just thought that Jerry was always fun to watch on TV, and I mean, she's just gonna dream about Hershey bars and think it's a man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I think Jerry's a great pick for the list. I personally didn't consider her because I do think, just from what I know about Jerry, Australia is kind of the peak of her as a character, and I'm only halfway through Australia. So it wasn't really something where I felt like I'd seen enough of her to really get her. I almost forget she's on All-Stars, to be honest. I don't remember anything she did on All-Stars.
She was robbed on All-Stars.
I do remember objectively that, but like watching it, I didn't pay attention to her at all. And Heroes vs. Villains, she's a good character. She just wouldn't be in my top 20. And I think it'd be very interesting to see, honestly, either Colby or Jerry without the other. I think their characters and their arcs are so closely tied to each other, where I want to see one of them without the other, and not just on a tribe without the other, on a season without the other, where they can't narratively be tied to that other person at all, and we can really kind of, especially Jerry. I think Colby, his story it was a little bit about Jerry, but it was mostly not, and it never really has been. But Jerry's story has been so inextricably linked to Colby's that seeing Jerry play the game without Colby would be very interesting.
I agree. I definitely
although
agree with that.
I think we've moved past the point where we will see Jerry play again,
Yes.
Especially without Colby. The only chance I see her playing again is playing in Legends, and that would have to be with Colby.
I feel like Colby would be more likely to cast than Jerry in any circumstance, and I feel like they might want to limit that 100%. Connection too.
I agree with that 100%. That is the one season, other than like a Blood versus Water season, because I don't know her family or if she'd be interested in that at all, but that might be actually a very interesting type of season to see Jerry on. That would be. And I would very much enjoy that. But yeah.
All right, well, let's get into your number 16.
So, for my number 16, I have someone who was on the very first season of Survivor Borneo. I have Rudy.
Mm-hmm.
Rudy is hilarious. Rudy would not work on TV in 2020. But Rudy is, if you pay attention to him as a character on TV in 2000 and 2004, he's great. You can kind of ignore some of the problematic stuff that he kind of said and some of his a little bit more problematic opinions, but he was just generally, he was a grumpy old man, but he still was very likable. He still was very friendly. He made this unlikely connection with Richard, and even though he would joke about that a lot, you could tell, even just watching that one season, that him and Richard were going to be pretty much tied together for the rest of their lives, that they had really formed this close bond. And that was so interesting to watch, because I also think that it forced Rudy to grow as a person. He had to kind of changed some of his beliefs and changed the way he acted a little bit to be friends with Richard. And he didn't even actively make that choice. He just did it. But he didn't let his snarky comments go away just because he was becoming a little bit more tolerant. We still heard a lot of the snark, and I was here for every little bit of it.
Mm-hmm. I do have Rudy on my list, so I'm not going to say too much. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed Rudy. I thought he was the standout for me in terms of Borneo. And I do think that his connection with Richard does have a big part to do with it. And I think that Rudy is just, he reminds me of just my own image of a lot of old people. Because a lot of them just don't care much about what other people think, and they don't care what they say. And Rudy showed that to the fullest, and it just worked on reality TV, considering that he was one of those old people that was actually fit enough to go out there and be on the island. And you needed a little bit of a taste of that. And we don't get that many cast members that are that old, especially not on Rudy's level. But we don't even get many in the 60s anymore. So Rudy, I feel like, stands out because of that. But then, I mean, the whole thing of him being a retired Navy SEAL and his contrast to Rich, but then they grow that bond, his hilarious confessionals. Rudy's awesome.
Yeah, Rudy's great. Definitely the standout character from Survivor Borneo, and that's definitely what Survivor wanted. They wanted him to be the standout character. And, I mean, may he rest in peace, first of all. So sad to have lost him, although he lived a very long life, and it's not really all that surprising that he did die. He was 72 when he played, correct?
Yes, I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was 70 the first time, and then he was 74?
He would have been 74 because he filmed 4 years later for All Stars.
72, 76, something like that. He was in that range, though.
Yeah.
And he was the oldest player ever when he played in All Stars.
Yeah, for sure. And that was 20 years ago. And so he would have been at the youngest 90. So all of it makes sense. But he I can't say he changed the game, but he definitely, if Rudy were not on our television screens, I don't know if Survivor would still be here today.
I agree.
So we got to give it up for the OG Rudy.
Rudy Bosch. It's the man.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to hop into my number 16. And my number 16, we've already talked about her, but I'll go into a bit more detail. It is Nora. And Nora was that bright spot where she really didn't realize what was going on in Island of the Idols. But I do think she is similar to Jerry in that way. However, Nora was a lot more lighthearted about it, which I enjoyed a lot more. And the thing with Nora is just, I can't believe she's an entrepreneur, or at least that's what her job is listed as in Island of the Idols. I can't believe that she is running a business and people are working under her. I just imagine her workers are probably like, she's crazy. I bet I'd have a lot of fun working with Nora, but I think it would be a wild ride. That's for sure. And you just see everything with Nora, the way that she's convinced that Tommy and Lauren don't need to go to fire against each other and that she should bring Tommy with her to the end. I thought was hilarious just because it just shows how little she knew. And you see things like, I think my favorite Nora moment was probably when she tried to be the caller in the challenge. God. And you just hear Rob and Sandra saying, what is she thinking? She doesn't understand that she's not going to be able to pull this off. And then she goes back, makes the worst lie in the world, but then she's already caught so deep in it that she just keeps on going on. And then she gets to the challenge and she's sitting out. She's like, what, me? Are you kidding me? She's so persistent saying, I can be the caller. But I just have to make sure that that's my role But I guess I could have been just in the chat. It's hilarious. She's so lost. She does not know anything surrounding her on that island, and it's great.
Oh, nothing. I would have to say my personal favorite Nora moment is when she's going on that like rant about like her like boyfriends or ex-boyfriends or whatever at the like final 8 when it's like 4v4 and she's trying to rally the troops, and the Survivor editors, I don't know if they did her dirty, but it sounds like they did it, like where they just edited the time lapse of her just like ranting at her trimates for like half an hour to an hour from what I've heard, and it's just, that's amazing. I like that type of stuff. It's always going to be funny. She could do the literal exact same thing next season, and the next season she plays, and we'd still all find it hilarious. Like, she could do every single thing the exact same next time, and it's still going to be a joy to watch. We're not going to be bored of it. Nora is everything. Queen Nora. She will never win this game, but I will always be happy to see her on my TV screen.
Yes. All right, well, let's hop into your number 15, because I think we've covered Nora enough.
Yes, I agree. My number 15, I am pretty confident that this person is going to be on your list, and that you might be a little mad at me for how low this person is on my list. I have Tyson Apostle at number 15.
Okay, I'm not mad at you.
Genes, Heroes versus Villains, Blood versus Water, and Winners at War. I love Tocantins. There's at least one other Tocantins person on this list that I like a lot better than Tyson, but Tyson is still, once again, you're going to get that snarky humor all the time. He's good at strategy. He is a good narrator, even though he's so snarky. He's a good he's not the most reliable narrator, but you're always going to, and he's probably not going to be the person who's telling you kind of the whole story of the season, but he's going to be your alternate narrator of whenever you want to have something that's a little bit funnier.
Yes.
He's not your go-to, but he's your alternate, because he's always going to give you something entertaining, and he just also plays it up for the camera and is like not unwilling, like he's totally willing to just like go and goof off and do some crazy shenanigans, like the whole coconut thing and Blood versus Water and the peanut butter and Winners at War, just like some of that stuff there that it's just like everyday funny. It doesn't really have anything to do with the game. It probably wouldn't have happened anywhere outside of the game of Survivor, but it was still just quintessential Tyson and really showed you who he was as a character, where he was just there to have fun, win the game, and didn't really care what anyone else thought about him or anyone else. He was just there and was going to play his game, and I'm here for it.
Well, I think Tyson has such a unique sense of humor, and you thought I'd be mad about you putting Tyson this low. I thought Tyson was difficult to rank, actually. I put him a lot higher than this. I will say he is on my list. But he was difficult for me to rank in terms of how great of a Survivor character he is, because I think Tyson is so different in terms of everyone's opinion. I think a lot of people generally love Tyson. Some people are not really into his humor. Very few that I've encountered, but that's okay. The thing with Tyson, though, it is that unique sense of humor that keeps him going. And I mean, you've got all of his moments in Tocantins where he's talking shit about Sierra and, you know, going naked in the pool or the pond or whatever. Not a pool. That'd be cool if they had a pool on Survivor. That would make them feel a little relaxed. And then you got the peanut butter and Winners at War, the coconut stuff, faking the shoulder. There's so many great Tyson moments throughout Survivor. And you see that he's this competitor and he's out there to play. And at the same time, he's just funny. He's a goof off. And you see him develop over his 4 runs at Survivor. Like at the beginning, he was a bit of an arrogant, cocky little prick. But we still loved him because he was hilarious.
He also would tell you, he would be the first person to tell you that he was a cocky, arrogant little prick.
Yes, yes, exactly.
He'd be the first person to tell you. He's always been self-aware and will tell you, and is not afraid to tell you exactly who he is.
Mm-hmm.
which is great.
And then he has no shame in that, but then you also see him soften up over time. He's still the same old Tyson, but he's just a lot softer. You see him with his love for Rachel in Blood vs. Water. And then you see him in Winners at War, and all he can think about is his 2 daughters. And it's just very nice to see that development out of Tyson. He's one of the better developed characters in Survivor history, on top of being hilarious, but I'm not going to say too much more. Because, again,
totally
he is
fair.
later on my list. I'll probably bring up some of my favorite Tyson moments when I get to my Tyson pick. Because I just think Tyson has so many iconic moments.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. I'm sure we'll talk about him a lot more.
Well, I hope I talk to him. Tyson, if you hear this.
Yeah, call us. We'd love to interview you.
Yes.
Call us. That's not going to happen. But anyways, let's hear your number 15 now.
All right. Well, my number 15 was also already talked about. It is Jay from Millennials vs. Gen X. And I think Jay, I mentioned how he's a great anti-hero, but there's just so many great things about Jay because you wouldn't expect him to be so cold. You said he's like that surfer dude. And he comes out there, and you see in the Michaela blindside just how cold he can be. He's ruthless. He wants to win. He's so competitive, and you want to root for him after all of that, even though he's a dick, which is great. In that one moment, he's a dick. Jay's not that much of a dick. He's a great guy. I can tell through my TV screen, but I can tell he's got that cold side to him too. It's like he's got those two sides, and you never know which one's going to come out. And I think Jay, in terms of the young guys in Survivor, the young, more athletic guys that we've seen throughout the show's history, he's really up there in terms of one of my absolute favorites. I prefer Jay to guys like, sorry, he's not on the list, Ozzy. I prefer Jay to guys like Malcolm, even though Malcolm's just a lot calmer and not as much like in your face, rambunctious. I just thought Jay had so much interesting depth to him, and that's why I feel the need to see him again. And it's sad that we haven't seen him again. I know he hasn't really had the chance. But I would have liked to see him on something like Edge of Extinction, for example. I think he would have been one of the good returning players there.
I think that he would have been a better counterpart. It would have been. I think it was for a season with captains, especially when there's going to be two captains. I feel like the captain should kind of almost pair up and be a little bit more similar, so that the tribes are getting similar archetypes. So having it was Joe, Anglum, and David. The tribe that's getting David is really losing out. So I feel like it.
Keep in mind, if you had David and Aubrey on the same tribe, that'd be a little fucked up.
Oh, no, I'm not saying switch them. I'm saying maybe instead of having David, you could have had Jay. Jay replacing David in that spot, I think would have been very interesting. And then the tribes would have been a little bit more evenly matched. Because Jay's not quite as strong as Joe, but Kelly is definitely stronger than Aubrey in challenges. But then, like, Aubrey's a little bit smarter of, like, a game player. Like, it's the balance of the things. And I feel like that would have been a little bit more balanced than having David Wright. Anyways, I'm not going to critique the casting of Edge of Extinction anymore. I agree with all your points about Jay, obviously. I think part of the fact that I'm actually surprised he's a little bit higher on your list. Same with Nora than on my list, just because you have more characters to put on your list. Like, just you are familiar with a lot more Survivor characters. So it would have been, I think, a little bit more logical if we were switched. But your placement isn't that much different than mine. I totally agree with it. Makes total sense to me. Jay's great. If he's not on our screens again, Survivor is playing us.
I agree. And hopefully his time on the challenge doesn't really interfere with that, but I don't think it will. I think he's back on Survivor at some point. I think he's getting a call. Hell, he might have gotten a call for 40, and we just don't know.
He probably did get a call for 40. Because they probably, my guess is that I think they were talking about doing like legends, winners and runners up, and then that just became all winners when they figured out that they could get enough winners. And then Old School versus New School were probably the 3 seasons they were casting for, and he was probably up for consideration for Old School, New School. But the other two, I don't think, obviously, winners and runners-up, he couldn't have been on. And I don't think he's a legend quite yet. But
in my heart, he is.
Yeah, obviously, in our heart, he's top 20. In Survivor's heart, probably not.
Yes.
But, yeah. I'll move on to my number 14 now. Another player we haven't spoken about. I have James Clement. That's how you pronounce his last name, right?
I think it's Clement.
Clement. I was like, it's either Clement or it's Clement. It's one of the two. James Clement from Survivor China, Survivor Micronesia, and Survivor Heroes vs. Villains. Every time we've seen James, he's delivered in some way or another. It's a shame he got medevaced in Micronesia, but he still got to be on the jury, and he was great before he was medevaced. He was great after he was medevaced. His reaction to Eric getting his immunity, giving away his immunity, is amazing. I've seen most of the pre-merge of China, so he's also obviously a very great character on China. And Heroes versus Villains, even, like, he's got the banana etiquette moment, which is hilarious. It's stupid as hell, but it's so funny, and it's great. And also, I was very surprised that he was on the Heroes tribe after watching his other seasons, because he is not a hero. I think he kind of represents, I can see why Survivor would maybe cast him as a hero, because he's like this big, strong guy that's like kind of likable, but he's mean to people. He's kind of mean to, like, on both of his seasons. He's if he doesn't like you, he makes it very clear, and he will be mean to you and like really actively try and take you out of the game for like personal reasons. So I've always considered James almost to be a little bit more of a villain than a hero. But I think I might be in the minority on that side. And he was definitely the villain of the Heroes tribe.
Yes, he definitely was.
He definitely was. But a great character. I don't think we need to see him again, but I love everything that we have seen of James.
Yes. Well, JT would be another villain from the Heroes tribe and Heroes vs. Villains. However, James, I will feel free to talk about him because he was, I believe, one of my last cuts to not get on the list for me. Yes, he was one of my last cuts, and he was going to be mentioned as an honorable mention at the end of this. So there you go. There's one of my honorable mentions. However, getting into James, I definitely love James, and I would argue he's more of a hero, actually, because he definitely was just such a big fan favorite. He was a 2-time fan favorite winner, which in the fans' hearts, they're always going to say, that's a hero. And he's like a gladiator out there in terms of him in challenges. The physical comedy of seeing James bully people in challenges, I find absolutely hilarious. Whether it's him pushing off Crazy Dave while he's naked on like that pirate ship, or there was one time I think he was against Randy or Coach in Heroes vs. Villains, and he just fucking flies them with that.
It was Randy. It was Randy.
And Randy just flies into the mud. It's like he left his feet. You can tell. It's like this guy. I think James is one of the most insane people we've ever seen in challenges. And he does have his comedic moments, whether it's banana etiquette or going out with 2 idols. And he does have some comments in China that particularly didn't age as well. But then I also loved him in Heroes vs. Villains when he's barking out orders at people like Stephanie. And you just never know what to expect with James, but you expect a lot of fire out of him. But at the same time, you see the hero in him when he's doing other things. Like another very heroic moment that I think about is when he was supposed to throw the challenge to get one of the Jean Hu members out, but he sees Denise can't eat the balut, I think it was, and he says, I gotta eat it. I can't let Denise suffer like this. So you see the heroic side of him. He really cares about those people. You see him be heroic around people like Amanda all the time. In Micronesia, he was a lot more of a hero, I thought. He was mad at a couple of people, but all in all, he was sticking to his people, which allowed him to be more of a hero. And James he's been injured on Survivor twice. It just goes to show how hard he plays in challenges, which is another thing I love to see. I don't think I've ever seen someone play so hard in challenges in Survivor's history. I love James. He's one of a kind.
Yeah, definitely one of a kind. Well, hell, I don't think we'll have another person of his profession on the show.
No.
I don't think we'll have another gravedigger on the show. Like, no one's ever going to be like him. I don't think he could ever win Survivor. He's another one of those people where he doesn't really think strategy through. He just does and hopes for the best. And as I said, he's not really nice to people a lot of the time. I think he's nice to people he likes, but if he doesn't like you, he's not going to be nice to you. Like, he doesn't care enough to put in the energy to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Like, I don't have the energy to put up with people I don't like a lot of the time. I don't blame him.
Well, I guess he's a reflection of people like us in that way, where he's just saying, I don't like them. But James is just that person that'll put it all on the table, and that's what's so lovable about him.
Yeah. I agree. I think he's fantastic. I am a little surprised you didn't put him on your list. He was one of your last cuts, so I get it. Just because you're such a huge fan of Survivor China.
It was so close. I was really toying.
That's the only reason I'm surprised.
I was really toying with Randy and James. It was really tough between those two. But I ended up putting Randy on just because I think Randy's just hilarious. James has his moments. Fair. And I feel like if we saw more of Randy, we'd be talking about him more, but we've seen so much of James already, which really helps us to really put into perspective how great of a character James is. Yeah,
I agree overall. I think that we both have similar takes on him, except for that I think he's more of a villain, but like I said, that's probably just a me thing. But otherwise, our takes on him are very similar. I think part of it's just I have less characters to put on my list. Like, Randy's a good example. Randy wasn't going to be on my list. There's no chance of that. I've seen 2 episodes of Randy. There's no way. That would be like putting Francesca on my list. I'm not that crazy.
Well, you are a little.
I would not put Francesca on my list. That's insane. But anyways, that's about it for James. Let's get on to your number 14.
My number 14 is Judd Sargent from Survivor Guatemala. I go back to this idea of I want to see people on my TV screen that just make me happy to tune in no matter what. And Judd was one of those people back in Guatemala. I was all out on Team Judd. And I just thought he was some of the best comic relief we've ever seen on the show. He's this Northeastern guy, and he's definitely got that Northeastern Boston kind of flair. And then, you just got some of the most iconic moments ever with Judd. The tribal council where he's fighting with Margaret saying, "She said I had ADD!" Like, that's just incredible. And he's so heated about it the whole time, and he's so emotional. And then Margaret's like, I never said that. And he's like, do I have ADD? It's like, well, we kind of think it now. But then you also get just so many good quotes out of Judd. I mean, his exit quote might be the best ever. I mean, we got chickens, damn! But Judd's like, scumbags, I hope you get bit by a freaking crocodile. I don't know if that's exactly it. But Judd just never failed to make me laugh. I was always enjoying myself whenever I saw Judd. And I think he's one of the forgotten characters in terms of Survivor history, in terms of who they've cast back. And to me, he would have been one of the top people to cast back from that era of Survivor. I think he would have been perfect for fans versus favorites. It's just, it was so loaded. I think if it was an all-star season like it was supposed to be, it might have happened. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we haven't seen Judd on our screen since then, and he's just going to be left as one of the best one-time characters in my eyes in Survivor history.
Yeah, no, I think that I understand all your points about Judd. I think he's a little high. I can see him in a top 20, but at 14, that seems a little high to me. I don't think that Judd plays as well to women as he does to men. Just generally, I think women have a lot of bad experiences with people like Judd.
I agree with that.
So I think we just generally project all of our dislike onto characters like that. Like, the only other person that kind of reminds me of Judd is Rodney. Although Rodney's definitely more of an asshole than Judd is.
Rodney's more emotional, too.
A man who goes off about someone saying, oh, you might have ADD is very emotional.
Well, that was more of a personal attack. Like, Rodney's like, it's my freaking birthday. It's like...
ADD is not that big of a deal. I would get much more offended if someone didn't do something for me on my birthday versus if someone, said I might have ADD. I'd be like, you're probably right. Like, okay. And just, move on. But anyways, digressing from the point, I think that he was never going to be on my list, but I also think that any woman who put him on their top 20 list, I would want to know why. I would be very confused by that, but I do understand why you enjoyed him a lot. And why he definitely should have come back at some point. It's a crime that he hasn't been back on our TV screens. He's still the same old guy, too. He'd probably go on Survivor again, too. And he'd be great.
I do want to point out, though, that it is important to keep in mind that Judd already hated Margaret before he went off on Margaret about the whole ADD thing. I think that's very important to put into context.
That's fair, but it's also that once again, emotional. It didn't have as much to do with the comment as the person saying it, and that's why I disagree with you on Rodney being more emotional than Judd, but I do agree that Judd is a much nicer person than Rodney is. And I would not mind hanging out with Judd. I would not want to be around Rodney.
All right, here we go. In the comments on the YouTube, or you tweeted us at @GetSnuffed_. Who is the better character between Rodney and Judd? And who is more emotional between Rodney and Judd? Let us know. Anyway, let's get to Madison. What number are we at? We're at 13 now.
13. So my number 13 is another fairly recent addition to the Survivor community. This person is from season 37, David versus Goliath, and it's Christian Hubicki. It's a 9 on an E. Christian Hubicki, the robot scientist person.
Professor.
He's hilarious. The challenge against Alec is obviously an iconic moment. He constantly was giving stuff like that, and the reason that was so funny is because if Gabby would have been up there doing the same thing as Christian, we would have been like, what is she doing? But that was already such a demonstrated trait of Christian's, is that he could talk forever and ever about almost anything. And that's what made that moment so funny, is Christian as a character. You couldn't insert another person in there and it be the same. It had to have been Christian who was behaving in that way to make that moment so great. And obviously, he's a great strategist too. He has really good intuition. He is good at reading people. He's a very good Survivor player. He is just following in the train of the David Wrights of the world. He very much is a similar archetype to David Wright, where he was always going to be too big of a threat to actually make it to Final Tribal, because he's also not strong. He can't win his way to the end. He might be able to idle his way to the end, but he was not going to win his way to the end. But he's a great character, another person I would love to see again. He'd be an obvious candidate for a Heroes vs. Villains 2 as well. He'd be on the Heroes tribe. Another great second chance player as well. We'll see him again, and he's great. Love Christian, 10 out of 10 Survivor character.
Mm-hmm. And we have pinned down 2 out of my 3 final cuts for honorable mention. Christian was a final cut honorable mention for me. I didn't want to put him on the list just because I thought I had someone on the list who might be of a kind of similar archetype. And I tried to take recency bias out of this as much as possible, even though David vs. Goliath is definitely my favorite season within the last 5 seasons for sure. Maybe 10 seasons.
Oh.
It's It's elite
definitely
for me.
in the last 5.
Definitely in the last 5, yes. But aside from that, I knew Christian was a person that I was going to love immediately. Once we get to that marooning and they have that challenge where they pick Christian and Lyrsa, and then Christian and Lyrsa kick the Goliath's ass, and then he says something about, oh yeah, I practice these sorts of puzzles at home with like the algorithms and stuff. I'm like, I'm going to love this guy. He's just absolutely hilarious. And I was like, I hope he doesn't go home early. That was what I was worried about at the time. And then the season goes on. I think the whole honorary brochacho thing was hilarious. And it was a good character moment because he's like, I've never been able to hang out with these kind of people. And it's kind of refreshing. And then, obviously, his best character moment definitely came during that challenge when he's just talking Jeff's ear off. I just wonder if other people have had the idea to do that. And that's what made Christian so unique. It wasn't just that he was able to do it. It's also that he had the idea to do this. It's just, I'm sitting there during an endurance challenge. May as well tell Jeff my life story. It's amazing.
I would do. It's something I would do. I'd be like, well, I'm bored. I'm going to be up here for a couple more hours. Let's just talk.
You might not have thought of it until Christian did it. Now everyone's going to want to do it. And that's what makes Christian so good. He's just so hilarious all the way around. You can tell he's got intellect for the game. And he stands out from the other nerdy archetypes on Survivor.
For sure.
I just don't think he stood out as much as one of the other ones that I'll have later on. But I love Christian myself.
Totally fair. I didn't mention the brochachos, and I should have. That was an underrated kind of story arc and talking point from that season. That brochacho alliance, it was barely an alliance, but it was fantastic. It was very entertaining. It was once again that kind of like physical humor of like, especially like John Hennigan, and he's like huge, and then there's just like, Dan doesn't look huge, especially next to John Hennigan, but like next to Christian he looks huge. But it's really, if you put Christian next to John, it's hilarious.
Yes,
it's so funny. Just the juxtaposition of those two is so good. Physical comedy, perfect. And he's just, I hope we see him again. I know he'll deliver on a second appearance. And that's what I think, especially for these one-time players, is really important in deciding, are they really a great character? Do we know when we see them a second time, are they still going to be great? And I know with Christian, in my heart, that he is always going to be entertaining.
I agree.
And I'm here for it.
I don't know if he'll come back because he does have a lot of work obligations, but I am very hopeful that it does happen someday.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. But I hope we see him back on our TV screens. And I do think he really wants to play again.
I do think so, too. I think he wants to play again. It's just, will he have the time?
Exactly. But with that being said, let's move on to your number 13.
Mm-hmm. So at number 13, we have my personal favorite first boot in Survivor history. I think people already know where I'm going with this. It's Reem Daly from Survivor Edge of Extinction. And she was the perfect person to be the first boot on that season. Not because we didn't want to see Reem in the game, but because of the Edge of Extinction twist. So then Reem, she's already saying dude and bro all the time. I'm like, how old are you? Like 45? I'm just loving that, though, because I'm just imagining if my own mother was saying dude and bro all the time, it would feel weird to me. Or even my boss, that would feel weird. If it was one of my older bosses, if it was someone around my age, I wouldn't think anything of it. But it's Reem's age and her motherhood that just made me think that was absolutely hilarious from the get-go. And then you see her go, but then it just gets better on the Edge of Extinction because she gets this mindset of, hey, these people voted me out. I'm going to make them suffer, basically. I'm going to talk shit to them all day, and I'm going to get off this Edge of Extinction, and I'm going to get back in the game. Whether it's the last thing I do, I will do it. And then she has this mindset from the whole way, and she's the highlight of Edge of Extinction. She's the queen of Edge of Extinction. I don't even say it's Natalie. Natalie is not the queen of Edge of Extinction. It is Reem. And
100%.
When we see Reem just barking at these people when they're coming onto the island, like, you fucking voted me out, dude. It's like, You suck, bro. It just makes me laugh so hard. We've never seen a first boot be so good. And I think Reem would have been an iconic first boot even if it weren't for Edge of Extinction. But this just made it so much better. And I think that's what helped Reem become such a good character, because they could focus on her as a character, and it wasn't really about gameplay with Reem. And I think if Reem came back, she'd be hilarious again. Going back to your point of would they deliver on a second time? Reem would deliver on a second time, and I do think she would not get last place because nobody would perceive her as a threat. And I love Reem, one of the more iconic characters from recent memory in Survivor. You can debate that a lot of it could be from circumstance, but it doesn't matter. When I saw Reem on my TV screen, I was happy to tune in, and I was loving my time.
I agree with you. I think Reem is iconic. I don't have her on my list. I honestly didn't consider any first boots for my list. And I think the main reason for that is I think Reem is kind of an exception there. With first boots, generally, you don't get an idea of who they are, obviously, unless they're from a returning season. But I think with Reem, you do get to know her. I don't know if she would deliver on a second season, only not because of who she is, but I don't know that she'd last very long. I think she has a very hard path to make the jury, and I also think that I could see her, if she's going to try and tamper that down a little bit, because that's what got bit her in the ass the first time, was acting that way. Will she be able to tamper it down?
No, she will not.
I don't know. But then she goes home early, and there won't be an Edge of Extinction this time, hopefully. If they casted her for another Edge of Extinction season, I'd be a little mad. But you feel stuff like that. I also I had something else I was going to say, and I've completely forgotten it. Move on.
Well, I'm sad that Reem's not on your list. And this was the only first boot that I did consider. And a lot of that has to do with just the time that Reem was actually on the screen. Sure, there were a lot of great first boots out there. I mean, you can mention Zane Knight or Chicken or really whoever, Timbertina. But Reem just got all that screen time, and it made me love her even more. And I just think that Reem was so fun to have on my TV screen. It's not someone that I'm ever going to expect to do well in the game, but even if she goes out pre-jury but makes it through 4 or 5 votes, I would be happy to see her again. I think she'd deliver.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I agree with a good amount of those points. I would be happy to see her again, too. This is what I was going to say. I think that Survivor casted her to be the first boot. I think that was kind of what they envisioned for her, and they almost wanted her to be the person to kind of introduce us to the Edge of Extinction. I think they knew she was going to be bitter and was going to fight people. And that makes for great TV. And I also think they knew she wasn't going to get along with her tribe. They knew that tribe was going to be a hot mess. They had to have. There's no way they could have designed that tribe and been like, things are going to work out well for them. There's no way.
It sucks, though, because that tribe was so much more entertaining than Kama. Kama was so boring.
I know. Honestly, Kama was really boring. I mean, some of that could have been because we didn't see a lot of them because they kept winning. But I also think just generally there were more boring people there.
Julie was the best person on Kama, which I know we're getting sidetracked, but that was the best person on Kama in my opinion. That wasn't a returnee.
I think you could make the argument for Victoria as well.
Yeah, Victoria was really under-edited though in the tribal stage.
I think so too. Yeah, I think you're right. But the point I think that they fixed some of those casting issues in 39. Well, in tribe design issues in 39, where. I don't remember the tribe names ever, but the tribe that had Nora on it was definitely the Kama of 39, but because they were all kind of normal people who were generally a little bit more boring than the other side, but then they threw Nora on there to throw a wrench in everything. And I think that's what they need to do. If they're going to cast a tribe of mostly normal people, they need to throw some chaos in
yes,
there.
Yes, they do. They need some.
And then the other
character.
tribe can still be a train wreck. Like, the other tribe on 39 was a train wreck. They were not ever going to work well together. They were too many different personalities. That's where all the big characters were. But just throwing that one wild card on that other tribe is really smart. And I hope they continue almost that casting pattern where it's the two tribes, the train wreck tribe and the mostly normal tribe with the one question mark. And I think it works out great.
All right, let's get back on track, though.
Yeah.
You're number 12.
My number 12 is from Survivor Africa. It is Lex Vandenberg.
Really? I thought he'd be higher for you.
I think that Lex did deliver, but I don't know how much he delivered now. Unlike a lot of people in my everyone in my top 10, actually, let me double check that before I make that claim. I think most of the people, if not all of the people in my top 10 would perform better than Lex in a new season. Not just like get farther in the game. They'd just be more interesting and more fun to watch and like do more and like pretty much be guaranteed to get a big edit. I think the only reason that Lex playing in a modern season would be guaranteed to get a big edit is because he's such an iconic character. And even then, I think he still might be kind of overshadowed by a lot of other people. I think that Lex was a very interesting character in the era of Survivor that he played. He is definitely the closest thing we have to an anti-hero in those first 4 years of Survivor. There was nothing close to an anti-hero except for Lex.
Even though he's a villain, but okay.
Yeah, but I'm saying a lot of people consider him an anti-hero, and he was by far the closest thing we had to one. And people still were rooting for him, for the most part, especially more in All-Stars, but in Africa, people still did like Lex a lot, and I think the anti-hero from him is he's a good guy, but he's willing to play the game. And that would definitely make him just a hero now, or just like a normal Survivor player. A lot of the interest in his type of gameplay that makes him such an interesting character, I think has gone away, where the reason he was such an interesting character is just because he was a good guy who liked to play the game as well, and he played the game hard. And that just makes you normal now. That doesn't make you interesting.
Yes. I also think with the time period, him having piercings and tattoos all over him, that just was not normal back in 2001. It was a lot different for people to... People were perceived as different or sometimes scary if they had a lot of tattoos and piercings. Now it's just, they're normal.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think his relationship with Big Tom was really interesting. Big Tom was someone I considered putting on the list, but I think that I did not because he does not age well at all, and he definitely couldn't be on Survivor now. But Lex is unproblematic for the most part, and he's very interesting. He's fascinating. He has very interesting opinions about everything. I could sit and listen to him talk forever. I think he also, like, the way he portrays himself physically isn't who he is. And that's the other big thing, is there's such a disconnect between his physical appearance and everything else about who he is as a person. And anytime those two things contradict in the way that they do with him, I very much enjoy that. He looks like he's going to be like hard and tough, but he's really just a big softie and enjoys getting to know people. But he has a lot of pride and all that stuff. He's just great. Very entertaining. Love Lex Vandenberg. Great character.
Yeah, I just thought he would definitely be higher on your list because I'm not sure if you guys in the audience know. You probably do know, but Madison and I talk outside of this podcast. So whenever I'm talking to Madison about Africa, she just goes, I love Lex. Like that's just what she'll always say. I love Lex is something very common. I mean, for anyone 21 and over, you could probably play a drinking game for how many times Madison says she loves Lex, or how many times she says 100% in this podcast, if you want to die. However, I would not recommend that because you will die. Don't do it. But yeah, I just thought he'd be a lot higher because you love to talk about how much you love Lex. I definitely think he's your favorite character from Africa, which is probably your favorite old school season as well.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah,
both of those things are true.
That's why I thought he would be a lot higher because I know you definitely have more recency bias because you're more enthralled by new school. However, I thought that you might try and supplant potentially one of your favorite old school characters higher up than that.
Oh, I definitely have some old school characters in my top 10. People from the first 10 seasons. Like I think that my big problem with Lex is that I just don't think that his character translates to a modern season of Survivor, and there's plenty of old school characters who their character type and the way they are as people still translates very well to the modern game. And I don't believe that Lex is that person.
Yeah, I think Lex would just be more of a good player nowadays than a good character.
I don't even think that because he doesn't really believe in the new school way of the game, so he'd play very old school. And
old school can work though.
It can, but I don't think that makes you seem like a good player nowadays. It's once again, like, I just don't think that Lex belongs in a modern season of Survivor. He's very much a time capsule character. He not only no one like Lex could come up now, but I also think that his character type would not work in modern day Survivor. And that's why he's not higher on my list. But
it's fair enough.
I love everything about him. He's fantastic. Let's move on from Lex, though, and on to your number 12.
All right, well, my number 12, it's Parvati. I think Parvati goes beyond just being one of the queens of Survivor, a great player, but she's just a great character as well because she fits that archetype, and less so nowadays, of course, because she's older. She's a mom, 10 years older than she was back the 3 times she played before. However, you still see that wit, which was one thing we saw in Winners at War that we enjoyed, and she's still kind of got that spunk. There's elements that are still there. However, Parvati really popularized the flirty girl on Survivor. She wasn't the first. I know there were people before that used flirting as a strategy outwardly, like Julie back in Vanuatu. However, Parvati, the way she does it, I just thought was much more enjoyable to watch. Maybe because it led to more strategic benefit, but there were also just good character moments, even in Cook Islands, where she's in a hot tub with Yule and Ozzy, and then she convinces them all to get naked, basically, and they're all just naked in the hot tub. It's like, that's flirty gameplay that you don't really see being so convincing, but then it works on these guys, and it's that element of being the flirt and being someone who's really showing she's willing to do whatever it takes to win. She does not care. She's just about getting that bread. And that was one of the more ruthless females we've ever seen on Survivor. We really don't see that aggressive gameplay from many women on Survivor, especially during that era. And that's a large part because they could be under-edited, or some of them just may not feel that it's the best based off what they've seen in the past, and then they try and follow the patterns that have been in place that the show is representing to people, which ties into the editing. But Parvati rose above that, and that's what I thought made her so compelling and so fun as a Survivor character.
No, you are totally right about Parvati. I think that number 12 might be a little low, just objectively, for Parvati. I think she is easily top 3 female characters that Survivor has ever seen. And I think that inherently earns her a top 10 spot on a top 20 character list. I think she deserves it. She revolutionized the way that women are edited on Survivor. And the way that women can play Survivor. Women can play an aggressive game and win. And that's why we see a whole bunch of women come onto the game now saying, well, I want to play like Parvati. She is the icon that people come in knowing how she plays and wanting to play like her. She's likable for social and all that stuff. I just realized I shouldn't keep going on and on about her. She's later on my list. I'll save a lot of it for there. But I do think that she deserves a top 10 spot. And I'm a little mad you have her at only number 12.
I agree with your points. The thing is, I just don't think there's as much depth to Parvati that I really find enjoyment from on my TV screen, or that I see enough comedy out of Parvati. And I definitely like a bit more comedic elements out of my Survivor characters, or I like them to be absolutely ruthless or iconic. And Parvati is one of those. I don't think she's both.
That's fair. I still disagree with you, but I think that's fair.
All right, who do you got at number 11?
So my number 11 has played with Parvati. We've talked about him many times on this podcast. We've talked about him many times on this podcast. We've talked about him today, just while recording this episode of the podcast. It's Eric Rickenbach? No,
Reichenbach.
That's Davey's last name. I always get Reichenbach and Rickenbacher mixed up because it's Davey. They sound very similar, so I just automatically go into Rickenbacher, but I know it's not Rickenbacher.
It's Reichenbach.
Anyways, yeah, Eric Reichenbach from both Fans vs. Favorites seasons. Every time I go back and watch even just like moments from Micronesia, elements of Micronesia, like the season of Micronesia, every single thing that Eric says is entertaining. Everything. He's such a weird kid. He's very strange, but he's so open, and he shares all of his feelings and he doesn't care what others think of him. He's just going to live his life, and he's just living his dream, and you can see that in every little moment. This might be really the first person we see that gets that like super fan edit of he knows everything about Survivor and he really wants to get far in the game, and like he has all these goals and he looks up to all these people. Survivor is almost more of a lifestyle for him than just like something he watches. He is all consumed in Survivor. He is the super fan archetype. He starts it. And I haven't watched all of Caramoan since it aired, but like I kind of just tend to forget that Caramoan exists. I don't think Caramoan did any favors for anyone except for Cochran. Even then, I don't know, like, other than winning, I don't know how many favors it did for Cochran. And
Malcolm got some favors from it. His idol play was pretty key.
I think so, but I also think that that just kind of maintained his status. I don't think it really made him that, like, even more iconic or anything like that. It just maintained Malcolm's status.
Yeah.
But literally everyone else on that season, it did nothing for them. And I think Eric is right there. He went out in the exact same spot, in a very different way. He played a great game in Caramoan. It was just a weird season, and the characters that they casted were the ridiculous people, so he inherently got less screen time. And it was 5 years later. He'd grown up, and it was a different time. But I think that what we see of Eric now is still very entertaining. Like, him in Sequester was
incredible.
Great entertainment. I love how much he just hates life now, and makes it very clear. Like, he's having a fun time, but he, like, makes his hatred of things very known to people, and he is just kind of sick of things a lot of the time. He's like, yeah, I don't care. Just, like, let me do whatever. Like, It's fine. Anyways, I find him very entertaining. I don't know why I have him at number 11. That might be a little high for him, but I think he's always fun to watch.
Yes, I agree. Eric was on my short list, didn't make my list. However, I do agree that he was very fun to watch, and I think you nailed a lot of the points. He was really that first super fan that just absolutely loved the game. It made him a perfect cast for Fans vs. Favorites. The way he looks up to Ozzy, the way he wants to be Ozzy is absolutely incredible. And I just think that he was always entertaining. You think he's a weirdo, but at the same time, you're like, wow, he's athletic. He's winning these immunities. And you'd think, being a fan of the game, he wouldn't make one of the biggest blunders in the game's history, but he did. And that's just what makes Eric so awesome. And he was really the only person that I loved off of that fans tribe. There were some other people that I might have liked a little bit. Like Jason, I thought was kind of a fun character. Natalie was a fun character. But Eric, I love. And Eric's got hair that's like way longer than mine right now. And then he's got an iconic look to him too. And he is awesome. I just don't think that his showing in Karamoan made me want to put him on the list, because I love him in Micronesia. I don't know how I feel about him in Karamoan, but he was very under-edited in Karamoan at the same time. Unfortunately, he got medevaced, because who knows? Maybe Eric could have won.
Exactly. And like I said, I totally get that. It makes total sense why he just was on the short list, not on the actual list. I think that's totally fair. I think I have a really high perception of Eric compared to other people, and I also generally have fewer characters to add on here. Although, to be fair, there haven't been that many characters on your list that I wouldn't have put on my list, just like from not watching them. Randy's the only one who flat out I wouldn't have, and then Jerry was just like, Australia is really important to her story, and it's not there. But I think other than that, all of your characters I would have put on my list, just from eligibility. But I think that Karamoan, it's probably, actually no, it's definitely in my bottom 5 seasons, and I just ignore it. I pretend it doesn't exist. I find it very hard to watch. And I didn't find One World hard to watch at all. And I could probably make it through Redemption Island pretty easily, but Karamoan, I can't.
It's tough for me to make it through any of those seasons.
I can't watch Karamoan. I will never rewatch Karamoan. I just can't do it. I can't make it through it. It's impossible. And that's why I kind of just like ignore it for Eric's case. And I think that if he were to be brought on again, if they ever did a third fans versus favorites, bring him back again.
Well, I think they could do another Philippines kind of season where he could be a medevac captain too.
That's true. That would actually be more fun. But I think that like bringing him back, he'll still deliver a third time. Karamoan was just such a questionable season. Mm-hmm. The casting of it was questionable. The execution of it was questionable. Everything about it was not great. So I tend to kind of not blame the characters on Karamoan for how they were perceived in Karamoan.
And unfortunately, it hurts his chances of getting back due to the poor reception from Karamoan. I think it hurts people like Reynolds off that season too, because I would like to see Reynolds off the fans tribe, but we're probably never going to see him again. I think Dawn was a cool character too, but anyway, I'm going to stop talking about Karamoan. And I will get to my number 11, and Madison, I already know you're going to be mad that this person is above Parvati, but this is, I said it last in our greatest moments in Survivor history, that this is the most iconic modern female villain in Survivor, and that is Cass McQuillan from Survivor Cagayan and Survivor Second Chance. And I don't even want to hear you say, oh, in Second Chance, Cass was so different, she just wasn't there. There was still the elements of Chaos Cass. She just tried to actually build bonds with people like Kelly Wentworth and Abby, just because she knew she didn't build bonds in the previous game, and that's what hurt her. And it just didn't work out for her because she was on the bottom. However, you go to Survivor Cagayan, Cass is immaculate. She is amazing throughout the whole time. You get to her on the Brain Tribe. She's just calling everyone idiots the whole time. I love it. Her confessionals about everyone is great. The only person she really liked from the get-go was David, and David gets trashed. And then she's like, Garrett's an idiot, Jatia's an idiot, Tasha's there, and Spencer's a hothead that needs to learn about himself. And she's right on all of these.
Oh, yeah.
And it's incredible. And she's like, I'd like to see... She's got that iconic confessional. She's like, I'd like to see the criteria for picking the Brain Tribe. And then she gets swapped, and she's like, this is my saving grace. And then we get into why she's the real villain once we get to the merge. The swap was probably the weakest part of her character. But at the merge, when she flips, she becomes the biggest villain in history. And then she has a bunch of confessionals about that, where it's like, I may not... I'm just a bitch because I'm the woman who flipped. I would not be a bitch if I was a man that flipped. I would just be considered a good player. And that's what made her a villain, interestingly enough. And then you get through the season, her beef with Tony is awesome. She really doesn't like many people. I don't think she really likes Trish either. She thinks Woo's an idiot, kind of. She thinks Woo just needs to, speak up and not be a puppy dog. She still thinks Spencer's a hothead, and they have a great beef, too, throughout the entire post-merge. And it just goes to show you're such a good villain when you can have such a beef with so many people. And then she got spoken to llama, too. She has that same shit-eating grin on her face all the time. I love Cass, and I just can't say enough about her. She took a lot of screen time in Kagiyan for a reason. It was her, Spencer, and Tony that took a lot of the screen time, and we know why. Because Chaos Cass is back, and she's the best. Best modern villain in Survivor history.
I agree with you. You mischaracterized me. I'm not mad that you put her above Parvati. I'm just mad that Parvati isn't in your top 10. And wherever Parvati, Cass over Parvati makes sense to me. I understand that 100%. I know that you're going to make fun of me for saying 100%. But then
she's not on your list, is she?
She is not on my list. But to be honest, I overlooked her. I don't spend a lot of time on these lists. I come with what first comes to me, and she never came to me, so she's not on my list. But I think she is the best modern villain, honestly.
I think she is the best modern villain. You could argue Tony, but Tony has almost become more of a hero in a way.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think that Tony, even in Kagiyan, and I think this is some gender bullshit, where he did the same shit as Cass. He was flipping all over the place, and no one ever, no one batted their eye at it.
It was definitely, no one bats their eye. It was a gender thing for sure, and Cass was smart to note it, and that's what makes Kagiyan age kind of well, too. When you go back and you see Cass has these confessionals where she talks about that. However, it led to her being a villain, and she's still considered a villain because of it. It's for the same reasons why we would consider someone like Big Tom to be a hero. Back in the day, that was fine. He was just funny. Now, he's sexist, and he's kind of a pig.
Yeah, definitely. But that's why I'm saying the entire reason Cass is not on my list is an oversight. I just forgot about her. If I were to rewrite my list, she probably would be on there, but I'm not going to rewrite it to put her in the top 10 because I don't think she deserves a spot in my top 10. I like all of my characters in my top 10 better than I like Cass. But I think her in the top 20 Survivor characters, I get it 100%, 1,000%. I am with you, even though she's not on my list.
Fair enough. Well, it looks like that's going to be wrapping up our podcast for the day. Hope you guys enjoyed. The next part will be coming up on Thursday. Hopefully this gets posted Tuesday. That's the plan. If not, well, tweet at me at @getsnuffed_. If not, if you see this on Tuesday, you can still tweet at me. Tell me whatever you want. Tweet at me and Madison. We are checking the Twitter. Follow us on Spotify. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And make sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or comment on YouTube. And let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to see. Any last words, Madison?
No, I think you covered it all.
All right, and also feel free to spread the word if you know anyone who likes Survivor, because we're always here to talk about it, and we would love to connect with some more fans. So next time we'll hit you guys with the continuation of the list. Words are hard, and I'm a podcaster, so that goes to show how skilled I am at this craft. But yeah, we'll finish up our list, getting into our top 10 characters, continue our celebration of 20 years of Survivor, and we'll see you guys later.
Yeah. See you guys later. Thanks for listening.